Hi, I'm April. I am a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about lyrics. Specifically, we are going to be talking about my 5 S's of songwriting. We're really going to get down to the essence of it. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. The first of my songwriting S's is story. As you go about writing your song, have a story in mind. Even if you don't think of your song as a specifically story-oriented song, having a specific story in mind allows you to really illustrate your main idea. That way you can really let your listener marinate in the examples around your main idea, and it'll help them to really understand what the song is about. Your story is really important because it allows your listener to be grounded in the world of the song and in the setting. And once they're grounded in it, they're able to really relate to the characters and to the main idea, which is really the point. Number 2, specificity. Once you have a story in mind, start getting specific. Tell us who your characters are. Tell us the setting. Tell us what the room looks like that character is in. Unlike in a medium like film, we're not able to actually see our characters. We're not able to physically latch on to someone else's imagination. Instead, we have to kind of imagine these things for ourselves, which means that when you're actually going in and writing your song, we want specifics. We want to know the details. We want to know the lived experience of your characters, because that's what really allows us to connect and empathize with your song. It's kind of counterintuitive that way. We kind of think that, oh, if I write something really broad, more people will relate to it. But actually, it's kind of the opposite. If we give our listener more clues about the setting and about the characters, they're going to be able to picture those events and those people way more intensely, which really just broadens the experience for them because they're able to empathize on a deeper level. For instance, in the Bright Eyes song, You Will, You Will, You Will, You Will, I really love the image of their first kiss in the attic of his parents' house. And the reason that I really connect with that isn't because I ever kissed anybody in the attic of my parents' house. It's because I can really picture that event. I can picture those people in that place, and it really gives a specific image that's easy to empathize with. Number 3, senses. This kind of builds off of the idea of specificity, but using your senses just means that instead of just painting a visual picture, we want to really immerse our listener into the world, and the way to do that is to use all of your senses. So those senses are, of course, smell, sight, taste, touch, sound. And what I like to do is to literally make a bullet-pointed list of all of the things that would be happening in my scene. So for instance, if I'm writing a breakup song, I'm not going to have my protagonist just saying, "Oh, I'm so very sad, the world is ending, and I don't know what to do." And maybe that would be in my chorus somewhere, or I'd be able to kind of incorporate that. But the bulk of it would be taking a specific instance and really fleshing it out. So for instance, if this breakup occurred in a coffee shop, imagine the whir of the machines drowning out the sound. Imagine she's wearing darker lipstick than she's ever worn before. Or that feeling of your stomach just dropping. Once you have a bunch of bullet-pointed things that you would be seeing and smelling and feeling, take those ideas and narrow them down to the things that work in your song. You don't have to use every single one of those things, but it's a really good jumping off point, and then you're able to really incorporate that. A great example of this is in the Leonard Cohen song, Suzanne. In this song, he talks about how she's wearing rags and feathers from Salvation Army counters. Really specific details. But then he also goes on to talk about tea and oranges that come from China. She shows you where to look among the garbage and the flowers. This song is full of sense-driven imagery. So obviously you don't have to get that in-depth with it, but what you can do is try to come up with those kind of bullet-pointed things and then incorporate them as you see fit in your song. Figure out what works with your rhyme scheme, figure out what works with the form and all of those good things, and then see what you want to do with it. You don't have to build the entire world like Tolkien style. But what you can do is have a clearer picture than you let your audience in on, so that when you do add those little details, your audience can kind of feel that there's a bigger thing there. Number 4 is subtext. So when you talk to somebody, think about how often you're not actually saying what is on your mind. Hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Chances are during that tiny exchange, you're not really going to be talking about the fact that your head is killing you and the fact that you barely got any sleep last night. Though kudos to you if you are the kind of person who would say something like that. So think about your characters as if they are real people. Think about how they would speak versus how they would think. chances are they're a little bit different. And you don't have to actually go ahead and talk about their internal monologue next to what they're saying out loud. But what you can do is explain the things that they're saying and then show us the things that they're feeling. So for instance, saying I love you through tears, or not looking up from your phone when you talk to somebody. An example that I love is The Dangling Conversation by Simon & Garfunkel. This one's also really good for sense-oriented details. One of the lyrics in that song is, "You read your Emily Dickinson, and I my Robert Frost, and we note our place with bookmarkers that measure what we've lost." Ugh, gorgeous poetic writing, but the thing that's really cool about it is that you're actually physically seeing what they're doing. They're just sitting in a room reading together. But we're also noticing the fact that there's something missing from this interaction, that there are a lot of unspoken things here that we're just not seeing or hearing. So use those tiny little implications to flesh out your characters and to flesh out their relationships with other characters. Number 5 is simplicity. Keep things simple. Don't feel like you have to cram all of this crazy detail into your songs just because I told you to. Instead, take the most important little details. Figure out what things are important, specifically if some of those images or some of those sense descriptions really bring forth a metaphor or tie into your main idea. But you don't have to say, she used her right hand to pick up the apple, which she then bit in the center of the apple. That would feel really clunky and probably wouldn't be necessary information for your listener. You can also totally delete words like the sound of, or she heard, or they saw. Instead of saying, she was feeling seasick, you can just say, she was seasick. I personally am a bigger fan of metaphor than I am simile, just because I don't think the words like or as blank as feel as necessary. But that's totally up to you. And of course, it is your song, and you have all of the right in the world to write it however you want to write it. But if you start getting caught up in all of these teeny little details and everything swimming around in your head, dial it back and bring it back to basics. And you're gonna have a much easier time actually getting your point across because you'll make sure that everything ties into your main idea in a way that feels cohesive. With all of that said, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to give it a like, leave a comment, and of course subscribe if you want to see more things like this.